It's the comparison of data, right? Comparing different pieces of data informs us on what to do with that data, or it can inform us on what to do with that data. So there are some comparison operators that you can use. The double equal sign. This is one that a lot of people have like a pitfall with because they're so used to the single equal sign in math. The single equal sign in programming is a declaration, right? It's to say, this equals this. It's not a question. It's just a statement. The double equal sign is a question. Does this equal this? Okay? And if we were working in some more complicated programming languages, like JavaScript, there is even a triple equal sign, which I think is hilarious. It's great. Nobody else thinks it's hilarious? It's cool. Just three equal signs in a row, I just think it's fine. That means something to somebody. Well, it means something. A double equal sign checks to see if two numbers are equal. It can be two variables, it can be a variable and a piece of data that's not boxed as a variable. It's fine. It's just checking to see that two different pieces of data are equal to each other. Are you marveling at the beauty, Tyler? The what? We'll get to those. I know. I'm sorry. Don't lie. You like that. Touch your feet. Not equal is an exclamation point next to an equal sign. And it just checks to see if two different pieces of data are not equal. The greater than or less than, we have greater than and less than with an equal sign, and as you might expect, that means that's checking to see if it's greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And then we have the greater than or less than signs. I don't have to explain what that is to you, because you've taken math all your life, so you know what the greater than and less than is. But know that they are a valuable comparison operator in the Python program. Finally, as Tyler pointed out, there are some really complicated ones down at the bottom there. Or and. They're kind of different from the previous operators, but I didn't want to make a whole slide with just or and on them. So they're here. Or and are special because it allows you to check for more than one comparison of data at the same time. In other programming languages, this is handled by symbols, like ampersand signs or the bitwise or symbol. In Python, it's just the words or and. So, can anybody tell me what they would expect the or to be used for when you're checking for comparisons? Yes?
Yeah, like your switch says on or off. Or I guess basically it's searching for one or the other.
Right. There are two possible comparisons that we're looking for, and if either of them is happening, then we can go ahead with whatever we're doing, right? So we're just looking for one of a number of possibilities to happen in order to trigger something. And, on the other hand, is looking for, right, it's looking for both or more. We can do more than one. Yeah. It's looking for all of a set of circumstances to take place. Yeah, all right. So what do you do with all those comparisons? What the hell does it matter? Use them in conditional statements. This is how the computer tells if there's a comparison to make, or this is how the computer knows what to do as a result of comparing things. So there are four types of conditional statements we'll talk about today. There's a fifth one in Python, but that's a little more advanced, and we'll talk about that later in the semester. These are all pretty much the same right here. If, elif, and else. So, the if statement is just saying, if something is some way, then do this. It's pretty straightforward. It's just checking for one or more conditions to be in place, and if that condition is met, then it does whatever the if condition says for it to do. You might notice, especially if you program in other languages, that there's this weird thing right here, this weird gap, and that there's no parentheses or brackets or anything. Python does not use brackets or curly brackets or parentheses. It doesn't. And that's kind of it's kind of a weird thing that pushes a lot of people away from Python as a programming language and makes it, I don't know, a lot of people feel like it's not as powerful as a programming language because it looks simplistic. But it's doing just the same thing, only without, it's using the spacing of the condition, of the conditional, instead of using brackets or parentheses.
So these seem like the rules of the game, right?
Right. That's even more broad than this, actually. This is just checking to see what things are happening. So if the score is greater than or equal to 5, the game is 1. Right? So you type out the if statement, and then in order to say what happens as a result of the if statement, you just press the tab key and then type whatever it is that happens. The else if condition is an extension of the initial if condition. So it says if this, and then this else if statement is saying if this is happening at the same time, then do this instead. So we'll say it'll check first the if statement. If the score is greater than or equal to 5, game is win. Then it'll go to the next one. We'll say else if the score is equal to 5, the game's tied. Okay? And then else is kind of the end point. So it accommodates for all other possibilities. So if the score is not greater than or equal to 5, this is a little, now that I look at it, I don't like this. But if the score is greater than or equal to 5, then the game is 1. If the score is equal to 5, then the game is a tie. For all other possibilities, the game has been lost. It's kind of just a streamlined way of saying if you have less than something, or, you know, usually you're just looking for a couple of possibilities, and all other possibilities result in something else happening. So in addition to the if, else if, and else conditionals, we have the while condition. This is a little tricky for some people. So the while conditional is a looping conditional. So once the program enters it, it will stay there until the condition in the while statement is not being met.
It's not you. I'm just like I'm wearing this now, so it's like, oh, I understand, but I'm also pretty weird. Not your fault. You're a great guy. Thank you. You're very handsome.
I knew that. So while the condition in the while statement is being met, it'll continue to do the thing over and over again. That's why it's tricky, is because it's easy to not have a way out of this loop. You have to build a way out of the loop into the loop, right? So this while loop will not, it won't keep going on forever, because it says while timer is less than or equal to 3, add 1 to the timer. Eventually the timer will get to 3, right? So there needs to be something, bless you, I'm sorry. So while the condition in the while loop is being met, it will not leave the while loop for any reason. Okay? There are some ways around that, but there needs to be a way out of the while loop using the condition. Are there any questions about while loops right now? Yeah, Johnson. So.
I have a question.
Okay.
For like all of the conditions, is it like, since like we learned to do it, do you have to put in that room, or does it just?
No.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you don't. Yes. You do not have to put end. That's weird. No, you don't have to put end at the end. Yeah, you just when you reach the end of like typing whatever happens inside the while loop, you just you go over one indentation space to signify to Python, the Python compiler, that it's done. What is programming? It's the response to the data. So when you're looking up here, we're just moving data all around right now, right? Okay? I know. They're all concurrent answers. They're all answers to the one question. They're all the same. It's the response to data. So as you may have noticed so far, we're just pushing pieces of information around, right? We're not interacting with the user, and the user is not interacting with the data. So in Python and in most programming languages, there's something called a function. And in Python, this is fairly unique. I don't know if it's in other languages. Are things called statements. Functions are a series of actions that perform a complex task. Usually something that needs to be repeated over and over again. So one of the primary functions of Python is called input. And you can tell it's a function because it has these little parentheses after it. So you type out input. What goes inside the parentheses changes with each function. So what goes in the parentheses is part of what makes the function run. So for the input, the only thing that the input function will accept in its parentheses is a string that will be presented to the user as a prompt for their input. So this input just asks, how do you do? That's it. Then there are statements. There's a few of them in Python, and they're kind of like functions. They're just it's a different way that it interacts with the memory of the system. But they perform a similar task. So the print statement is like the essential statement for Python, especially when you're only working with text. So when you want something to be printed, if you want something to be output to the user in text, you just say print, and then whatever it is you want to print. That could be a string. That could be a variable, if you have a variable that you want to print to the user. Are there any questions about functions or statements? That's all right.
That's
Yeah. So what is programming, Tyler? It's the organization of data, the manipulation of data, the comparison of data, the response to yeah, I did. You know what? I'm fine. Me too. Now, how do we bring it all together? The basic Python program structure is as such. This is a very, very basic example. As you can see, I called it an annoying sample. So in general, what you want to start with are the establishment of any variables that you're going to use consistently throughout the program. You want to do it up front because computer programs typically read your program from top to bottom. Python doesn't. So you want to declare your variables up front. So as you can see, I've declared a variable called counter, and that variable starts as a 0. I declared this string variable not, and it has not as a string. Answer, banana, joke, aren't you glad I didn't say banana? And the response is just an empty string for now. I'm just declaring it for now because in the future I'm going to change it throughout the program. So once we're done declaring, we get down to our while loop. And the while loop says while the counter is less than or equal to 3. So as long as the counter is less than or equal to 3, it'll keep going through this while loop. So what happens inside the while loop? It prints knock, so this is knock knock. It gets down here to response. And when the Python compiler sees response equals input, it knows to wait for the user to provide an input. So it then checks to see what that response was. If the response was who's there, which is the appropriate response, right? And the counter is less than 3, it'll print the answer, banana. And it'll add 1 to the counter. Now that it has done this if statement, it'll ignore the rest of these if, else if, and else statements. So So let's say this if statement is not achieved because either the response was not who's there or the counter was not less than 3. It comes down to the else if statement. It checks to see if the response was who's there and the counter was equal to 3. If so, it brings the joke. Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? So, after 3 times of the user saying who's there and getting banana as a response, on the 4th occasion, it'll say, aren't you glad I didn't say banana? Now, let's say that neither of these if conditions were met. It then comes down to the else statement. And for all other possibilities, that is to say, if they typed something other than who's there, or the counter was, it wouldn't come back as well as that was the counter. Oh no, I forgot to put the counter plus as 1. This would be broken. I'm going to put it 5 on the bottom. But you get the idea. So they come down here to else. And if they didn't type who's there, the computer will output, you have to say who's there. And it won't add 1 to the counter. So this is a pretty simple example of a Python program. Are there any questions? Yes, you do.
So when you initially said response was a variable, is it a string right now because that's 2 apostrophes?
Yes.
Quotes?
Yes, that's how it. That's how Python recognizes that the response variable is going to be a string. It doesn't really matter that much because when it gets down to here, the response to this input, it would just create the response variable anyway.
You could have gave it like anything else, and then you just gave it a new value, just take the new value.
Right.
Alright.
Yeah, anytime that you want to change the value of a variable after you initially declare it, all you have to do is say the variable equals something else, and it will change it. Yes.
And then you have to write who's there exactly, or you say who's there with a capital. I mean, lowercase w.
Right. So you're right. I haven't foolproof this for slight variations. So you're right. They would have to precisely spell who's there. There are ways to fix that, but in this example, you're right. There's only one way to spell who's there. Any other questions? So you might notice some stuff that I didn't go over in the presentation that are kind of little things. Up here at the top, you'll notice I put hashtags in front of these. In Python, in order to put a comment into your code, a comment being a statement that is not for the computer to read, is for future programmers and yourself to keep track of what the code is doing at any given time. So I put a hashtag before it, and anything on that line will be ignored by the computer. It's just a comment for the programmer's use.
So no backslash? So no backslash?
I'm sorry.
So there's no backslash?
No, in Python it uses the hashtag. Other languages, you're right, do use the backslash, and there are some other ones. Yes? No, you don't, actually. I know. No colons in Python. Oh, damn it. Shit, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of semicolons. I'm sorry, guys. We should have colons at the end as well.
Yeah, it's the same.
That's really weird. Huh? I'm sorry? Yeah, I think JavaScript has parentheses around it and then brackets, right?
No, I also use curls. No.
I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with that. Sorry.
The C++, they use the little commas.
Oh, no, semicolons are not necessary in Python, but Chris is right, we do need
So weird.
colons here at the end of each of these conditional statements. My apologies. So, what is programming? Just come and discover in the weeks to come what programming is all about. So you'll learn the Python programming language. We'll discuss how to apply the syntax of the language to real-life problems in game development. And I know, right? And we'll build projects along the way for you guys to include in your portfolio in the future. So this is Programming 100, Introduction to Programming Language, or Programming Logic. And you can find the syllabus and all the materials for the class at this website, dgprod100.wordpress.com. So you can find the syllabus, you can find all the assignments with their rubrics, and you can find the course schedule as well as links to supplementary resources. Are there any questions about the class or this introduction to Python? Yes, Tyler.
That's another answer to the question.
Yes. Yes. All right. Thank you for your time. If you're interested in continuing with the Python workshop over the course of the year, come by and talk to me after the meeting, and I'll get you set up with the textbook and everything. All right? Thank you very much. Now, Abby is going to talk about her narrative development workshop. Exciting. And I'll switch it over to your president.
Abby, do you need a bigger book?
Actually, it's 2 books. It's 2 books. All right. So, it's class. You're going to write narrative for video games. And you're not requiring any books. But if you want to know the books that I'm basing it on is this one. It's the first semester. It's Game Writing, Narrative Skills for Video Games. It is by Chris Bateman. If you want to buy it, it is $40. It's very expensive. You don't have to. I'm not requiring it. But it's definitely a good book to read if you want to be a writer for video games. Because that's what it talks about. The other one is Creating Interactive Fiction with Inform 7. We will be using Inform 7 second semester. And this pretty much tells you everything from finding it, installing it, and using it. This is also $40. If you want to buy it, you don't have to. So, be in my class. I'm the wrong one.
Okay.
No, I sent you a change.
Okay. Well, I'll bring it back up.
Yeah, here. Can you open it?
Yeah.
Start the class. Need some names of narrative-driven video games. I know you all know some. Alright. Which one? I can
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead,
Heavy Rain.
Heavy Rain. What?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty?
Yeah.
If you say Call of Duty,
Campaign.
Black Ops, I'm giving that one.
Yeah. Black Ops.
2, I think, is probably the best example, but that one's a barrel. Silent Hill 2? Banjo-Kazooie. Any more? Uncharted? No, it's Uncharted. Any more? Halo? Games with words?
Yeah.
Yes, games have words. They do. Alright. Where's the clicker at? Let's see if this works. Alright. questions that gamers have when they're playing games. They want to know what happens. They want to know the world that they are put in. They need to know who are the characters. And most important of all, why are they doing what they're doing? Not emphasize enough how important the answer to this question is. A great game can be ruined if it doesn't answer this question. So, good games don't have storylines. They have explosions. And they shoot people. It's all action. Nobody cares about the story. No. Games need story. They need narrative. They need to know what's going on. And the reason is because it provides framework, justification. It gives players a reason to achieve the goals that you give them. It sets up the situation. Why have I been dropped in the middle of this battle? People shooting people. You know, the guy standing next to me just got shot in the head. Why? Why are we fighting? Story answers this. And strings the events together. To going from that battle, to going back to home base, to going to the next battle, and then finally that end boss. And most importantly, it keeps the player playing. And as a game designer, that's what you want the player to do. I don't know how many times I've started up a game, got through the first couple minutes, turned off my Xbox, and went to sleep. Because that's how bad it was. I would rather sleep than play this game. But players just want to shoot people, right? They just want to watch people's heads explode. And they don't care about story. They do. And there's more and more players want story. Once again, back to the question. They need to know why they are doing what they're doing. Why are we killing little kids in Bioshock? Anybody know the answer? I know everybody does. Tyler?
I saved it.
You saved them? But why do you have the option to kill them? There's an option to kill them. Who killed the little sisters? See? Why did you kill the little sister?
Because they gave me more Adam.
Gave you more Adam. What's Adam?
Adam is basically the thing in the game that gives you more power-ups that you can use against enemies.
And that's why do you want it? Why do you want the Adam?
Because it makes me explode people.
So we're back to exploding people. Makes you more powerful. So all that was narrative. All of that was written by someone because it makes you want the Adam. It makes you go after the little sisters. But then, is killing children bad? Do we just walk through the streets shooting children in the head? No. Get arrested. Probably. They probably bring back the death penalty for you. Why don't we do that?
Because we're not insane.
Look at the guy in the game sound insane. Why is he doing it?
He's compelled to.
He wants to live. Get back to us, I guess.
You see with this guy.
Those are living context.
So, without the narrative behind Bioshock, the game wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't want to play it. Next, they need to identify with the game. Who was the guy guy from Bioshock? Why is he there? The guy from Bioshock.
There's a lot of guys in Bioshock.
The
One
main
you
character.
play.
From the
That
first
you as the
Bioshock.
player-
Main character.
Don't really have a name.
We can have names.
He didn't really have a name.